We are on a mission to find this year's breakout stars for fantasy football this year. We're going to go through and try and figure out who is this year's Kyren Williams, who is this year's Puka Nacua, who is this year's Sam Laporta, Jordan Love, all the guys that you probably had on your fantasy team last year that led you to victory. We are going to tackle their cases, what made them great sleepers, and kind of apply that to the 2024 redraft cycle here. So should be a fun exercise. Again, we're going to take the highest win rate players from last year's fantasy football in 2023 and kind of profile why they hit and see if there's a candidate to do that this year. So let's start with Kyren Williams. He was the highest win rate player of the late round options that you could have drafted last year. 21.18% win rate, ADP outside of the top 250 overall players. So we're talking way, way down the board, sleeper status. Good chance there's not going to be a guy this good who becomes a league winning running back as a late round undrafted dude. But Kyren Williams, second-year running back coming into the season. He was a young player, ambiguous backfield with a shaky starter in front of him on the depth chart. The offense in Los Angeles really outperformed our expectation and Vegas's expectations. People thought they were going to win 4 or 5 games. And then also you had a guy with pass-catching upside who was a pretty decent prospect, well-coached team that likes a workhorse running back. So, Danny, I'll let you go first here. Do we have a guy who could potentially be this year's Kyren Williams, or at least, let's say, a breakout running back from late in the draft?
Yeah, and just want to make that reference before we get into a lot of these players. You're going to hear some of the biggest league winner comparisons from last year. They're not one-to-ones. We're just trying to find an ideal path for maybe a guy that's undervalued to determine who could possibly hit. And my guy that fits the billing for this is rookie running back Tyrone Tracy of the New York Giants. Again, like you mentioned with Kyren, young running back, ambiguous backfield, offense potentially outperforming expectation. Well, when the expectation for the Giants is that they're going to be the worst offense in the league, it's not hard to outperform that expectation. Not to mention, we talk about how good Malik Neighbors is, Daniel Jones coming back to the fold, Brian Daboll, obviously a very, very good offensive play caller. This could be one of these sneaky, instead of a bottom 3 offense, potentially a bottom, 8 to 12 type of offense. And the reason why I have Tyrone Tracy listed here is that you're getting a young, talented running back in a situation where the starter ahead of him with Devin Singletary has the exact same amount of tenure on this team as him with Devin Singletary coming over this offseason. Tyrone Tracy checks all of the boxes. Well-coached team with a workhorse history. Brian Daboll, we saw what he was able to do, of course, Saquon Barkley. Not calling Tyrone Tracy Saquon Barkley, but we have seen that when Brian Daboll finds a running back that is the clear-cut number 1 in that backfield, he has no problem giving the ball. I mean, Saquon Barkley across the last couple of years has been one of the biggest premier workhorses in fantasy football. With Tyrone Tracy, elite pass catching upside. I was able to watch his film, yards created, graded all very high in those metrics last year in college. Again, this is a young player, so expecting him to handle that workload on day one may not necessarily be the case. But with Kyren Williams, like we saw, once he was able to get that opportunity, he developed into one of the best backs in fantasy. So again, I'm high on Tyrone Tracy. If you followed us in the Dynasty offseason, you would have pretty much figured something like this was coming, as well as the guy you have listed as your potential to Kyren Williams.
Yeah, and mine, of all these in this video, we're going to go through this year's blank for 9 different players, and this one is my favorite because Audric Estime is mine, not only because he went to the same college as Kyren Williams and also ran a slow 40 time, but also I think Javonte Williams kind of profiles as this year's Cam Akers, most likely as well, where he's a shaky starter in front of Audric Estime. It's a rookie running back who, just like Kyren Williams, fell in the draft because he ran a slow 40 time. Offense, I think, can be a lot better than we think in Denver, just like with the New York Giants, even though I believe in the Broncos a little bit more. Well-coached team. Sean Payton loves having a starting running back who can, work in between the tackles, get a lot of goal line work, and be the primary guy there. And also Audric Estime has some pass-catching upside as well. And Estime graded out as one of the best prospects to go on day 3 of the NFL draft. And like I said, from the University of Notre Dame, also ran a slow 40 time. So for me, this comparison kind of hits on multiple levels. Not saying he's actually going to be this year's Kyren Williams, but we've already seen, just like Kyren last year, him get, hyped up in training camp. Javonte Williams kind of having up and down reports. Maybe Javonte gets traded midseason, just like Cam Akers got traded last year. It would be an interesting parallel between those two guys. But I think just bottom line is these two guys are both good late round running back targets to break out, but maybe could be this year's Kyren Williams.
Once you get past round 15 on underdog, taking flyers on talented young running backs, potentially usurping their backfield hierarchy, is the way you want to be approaching it. So with Tyrone Tracy, Audric Estime, guys that will be taking on a ton of our teams. But we can go on to the second player here. And if you had this player in fantasy, you most likely ended up in a very winning position, whether that was with a first-round bye, potentially winning your championship. I'm talking about Puka Nacua, wide receiver of the Los Angeles Rams, coming out of nowhere, breaking the rookie receiving record, being one of the most dominant fantasy football wide receivers with a near 20% win rate. And with Puka Nacua, the way it's kind of outlined here on how he hit, day 3 rookie wide receiver, consistent drumbeat from the team in the offseason for how quick he looks acclimated to that first team offense, wins with his hands, his toughness, doing the right things rather than just being this overwhelming type of athlete. And with Puka Nacua, he had good film, even if the profile out of college was a little incomplete. And he was valued outside of the top 10 rounds of ADP with the upside to potentially be a top 2 target for a good play caller in his offense. Your guy listed here, Troy Franklin, I'll let you take it away. Why does Troy Franklin potentially profile as this year's Puka Nacua?
Yeah, and not only was Nacua going like outside the top 10 rounds, he was mainly undrafted in pretty much every format. And Troy Franklin, to me, he comped the closest to Puka Nacua in the FSC prospect model as far as a guy who analytically on a per route basis actually stacked up pretty well. Puka, of course, had a lot of injuries and things of that nature. That's why he fell in the actual draft. Troy Franklin had a bit of a subpar post-season process going through the combine and things of that nature. That's probably why he fell during the draft. The best prospect profile for a day 3 wide receiver since 2016. So not only did the Broncos get a great running back who shouldn't have gone on day 3, they also got a great wide receiver who shouldn't have gone on day 3 this year in the draft. Good film. Good fit for his offense, just like Puka Nacua was for the Sean McVay Rams. Also a good play caller by the name of Sean, with Sean Payton there in the Denver Broncos. And it's an offense that many are down on. Like I just said with Audric Estime, not many people think the Broncos will be very good, but they have a rookie quarterback and a good, well-coached team. It's possible they're better than people think. So to me, again, very unlikely we see a guy who's this year's Puka Nacua, who finishes rookie receiving yards record holder after his rookie season, after being a 5th round pick. But if there's a guy that becomes maybe this year's Dontavian Wicks, a guy that breaks out as a day 3 guy, I think Troy Franklin could be that dude for the Denver Broncos. Unfortunately, the one part that he's missing right now is the camp buzz. It's not very strong on Troy Franklin. They're saying that Josh Reynolds and Tim Patrick are running ahead of him on the depth chart. Marvin Mims probably running ahead of him on the depth chart, but we still got time. It's only August 2nd as we're recording this. It's possible that preseason games and things of that nature get Troy Franklin up to speed a little bit sooner. Of course, Puka Nacua week 1 had like 19 targets or whatever it was. I don't think that's going to happen for Franklin, but maybe he can break out as a rookie this year.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I understand that, a couple of these guys in this video, I'm going to mention, for example, at my tight end selection, they don't really fit the mold of having positive camp buzz at this current point, but especially when it comes to, first and second year players, let's see them in the preseason. Let's see them throughout the offseason as they develop going into week 1, because with Puka Nacua, if we're talking about this time exactly last year, he wasn't really on the radar. He more so became on the radar as camp went on, as the offseason went on, as we saw some preseason games. Puka Nacua was really a guy that come, late August, early September was on everybody's radar. So recording this in August, we're doing a little bit of projecting, but that's what we got to do. Funny enough, though, a guy that actually has been getting that type of buzz, despite not even seeing preseason work yet, is Jayden Polk, wide receiver of the New England Patriots. Now, I guess this could be considered a little bit of a cheat. This is a guy who goes routinely in the 12th, 13th round area on Underdog. However, I did pull his multi-site ADP here of 189 because with Jayden Polk, he's already looked the part according to New England. And if you watch his Washington film last year with the Washington Huskies, obviously made the national championship, playing alongside Jalen McMillan, playing alongside Rome Odunze, the vibe that you got is that this was a pro-ready receiver that wouldn't have needed a big-time learning curve to acclimate to the NFL. He has the opportunity, in my opinion, to be that New England wide receiver 1, has alignment versatility like Puka Nacua did, can align at that Z wide receiver position, can align in the slot, can be that ultimate chess piece for this New England offense. And with the situation, the quarterback and offensive situation, I say as a whole, aren't a true one-to-one to what we got, of course, with Matthew Stafford, with Sean McVay, but I do believe in this New England offense. I think it will outperform expectations. And whether it's Jakobi Brissett holding the fort in the early portion of the field or potentially Drake May coming on, week 5, week 6, being the level of prospect we think he is, regardless, we think this New England offense can outperform expectations, and Jayden Polk can be a big part of it. So with Jayden Polk, especially when you're in, your ESPN, your Yahoo, your sleeper leagues, and you can get him in the last round of your draft, I think that is one of the sharpest picks you can make right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not often that you get a player who is a good prospect, especially on film, who has a chance to lead their team in receiving. And not only that, like the beat reporters are saying they'd be shocked if he doesn't based on what they've seen so far. Like I had a fantasy news TikTok that came out yesterday that the beat reporters were saying like Jalen Polk is the best receiver here and it's not even close. Like that's what people are saying. And we think Pop Douglas is a good player. Javon Baker's got some buzz. You know, some veterans there like KJ Osborne and Juju maybe look half decent in camp. But if Polk is clearly the dude that is the number one guy there with Jakobi Brissett running with the first team offense already, that speaks pretty highly to the fact that he's probably undervalued, especially in home league formats. On Underdog, I think he's even undervalued. I think we should be taking this guy 10th, 11th round, and that is not where he's going right now. So this next this year's person is we're not going to find another Sam Laporta. No. Let's just put it that way. Like maybe it's Brock Bowers because he's a rookie tight end and he could have a monster season, but Sam Laporta was going outside of the top 150 picks in ADP and multi-site ADP. He was a guy that you could get very late in your drafts. You could punt off the tight end position, and he produced a monster season, 19% win rate, also had 10 receiving touchdowns, best rookie tight end season we've really ever seen. Rookie tight end, young breakout, great athlete, projected to be a starter. Very importantly, during the preseason and in camp, we were already hearing this time of year that Sam Laporta was going to start for the Detroit Lions. So that was a very crucial part of why you should have been drafting him. I believe we talked about him in our sleepers video. Him and Luke Musgrave both back this time of year last year were getting starter buzz for their offenses. And there was the upside that if Sam Laporta hit last year like he did, he would be the number 2 wide receiver in his offense behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. And we all expected, and it definitely played out this way, that the Lions would be a very good team and have a good offensive environment. So I doubt there's going to be a Sam Laporta rookie tight end. No. Obviously, we have Bowers, Ben Sinnott, and Jatavian Sanders were the top 3 tight ends in the class, but last year's tight end class was just significantly better than this year's tight end class. However, outside of the rookie aspect of this, I do think Noah Fant kind of fits the bill because he hasn't broken out yet. He's still really young, projects to be the clear starter. That's what we're hearing in camp right now because Colby Parkinson signs with the Rams. Will Dissly moves on to the Chargers in free agency. There's the upside to be probably not the number 2 wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, but maybe the number 3 wide receiver or number 3 target in this offense. And he's a great athlete, great offensive environment. We expect Ryan Grubb in this offense to really upgrade how they throw the ball and the tempo that they're deploying there. So if we're looking for just specifically late round, great athlete tight end that outperforms their ADP, and we kind of refine Sam Laporta's profile down to that, I think Noah Fant really fits the bill.
Yeah, with Noah Fant, it's pretty simple to me because I believe in JSN. I believe in DK Metcalf. I believe in this overall offensive philosophy. With Grubb coming over from Washington, the thing that I like sticking to is that with Tyler Lockett, he's a player who has seen his yards per route run since 2021 drop off every single year. In 2021, peaked at a 2.35 yards per route run. This past year, only a 1.61. It's hard to imagine that an aging wide receiver that's showing some decline is automatically going to go back up to that 1,000, 1,100 plus yard wide receiver like we saw in years past. Noah Fant, again, a lot less competition in his tight end core overall. Colby Parkinson obviously leaves. Will Dissly obviously leaves. The Seahawks were a tight end factory, it almost seemed like, for a few years where they were rotating guys on a weekly basis. But ultimately, Noah Fant is still the talented tight end that we saw in Denver. It's just we never really saw an opportunity for him to get that full tight end 1-level workload. Well, this year, with an innovative offense, with less depth behind him at that Seahawks depth chart, I'm really excited for the prospect of Noah Fant potentially getting back in the good graces of fantasy circles. Because, man, when this guy came onto the scene in the first round, once he was able to put those couple years in Denver, we're talking about this guy potentially having a top 5 level season breakout. Now, obviously, that hasn't come to fruition quite yet, but he's still that level of athlete. He's still that level of talent that I really do feel like if he gets the opportunity this year with more volume, could eventually be, maybe not a top 3 to 5 tight end like Sam Laporta was, but he could be a top 8 tight end.
Yeah, I mean, David Njoku from week 8 on was the tight end 1 in fantasy. And Noah Fant, David Njoku have had a very, very similar career trajectory so far, minus the switching teams. They've been very similar there. Mike McDonald comes from Baltimore, where, of course, they deployed Mark Andrews at a very high level. So Noah Fant, the guy to me that stands out as my premier kind of late round tight end target. And I was drafting a whole lot of him in Underdog. And I also took a lot of shots at him in Dynasty leagues too, because I think if he hits, like, he has a chance to really accumulate a lot of value from that perspective. So I'll let you talk about Ben Sinnott. He is the obviously prototypical answer, I would say, for this year's Sam Laporta, because he's one of the better rookie tight ends going later on in drafts.
Well, I mean, for starters, our comps for him coming into the league were quite literally what? Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, the young, efficient, big-time athlete tight ends that have really come onto the scene over the last couple of years. With Ben Sinnott, I understand right now that the camp buzz hasn't really been good. The coaching staff's, talking up Zach Ertz. Ben Sinnott has a lot to learn from an inline blocking standpoint. I fully get that the overall press hasn't been quite good yet. But like we talk about, when you're talking about a young athletic tight end like this, who got drafted in the second round, who had the prospect profile, the production profile that Benson had, let's see it happen in the preseason. Let's see him go out there, take his lumps early, potentially develop into that tight end one role. And once he is able to usurp Zach Ertz on that depth chart, there's an opportunity for him to potentially be the number 2 target in this offense. With Benson, like I said, very productive in college, elite athlete, 9.75 RAS. And quite frankly, he was not only my tight end 2 in this class, it wasn't particularly close. I thought this guy was a legitimate top 35 to 50 level talent, eventually goes in that range in the NFL draft. And people are so off of him because we don't expect, rookie tight ends to produce early yet. People are automatically, digging him down. He's fallen like 3 rounds in ADP over on Underdog because of these Zach Ertz reports. Guys, Zach Ertz can be the starter week 1, week 2, even week 3. But as soon as Ben Sinnott gets on the field and shows that he, quite frankly, at this point in their careers, has juice that Zach Ertz wishes he still had, Ben Sinnott will eventually be the tight end 1 on this team. And when he does get that opportunity, like I said, a very unclear type of receiving hierarchy. We assume Terry McLaurin's the 1. Jahan Dotson, I believe, will be the 2, but he did suffer his lumps in his second year in the NFL. And then outside of that, man, we're projecting Luke McCaffrey as a guy that's going in the 160 range of Underdog. So for me personally, if it's the bet of Luke McCaffrey versus Ben Sinnott, I will be betting on Ben Sinnott every single time. And not to mention, you can get him 1 to 2 rounds later than Luke McCaffrey is currently going. He's a guy that's going in the 17th round on Underdog when in this type of muddy tight end atmosphere where we know what the top guys represent. Once you get into, tight ends 14 and on, it's a lot more unclear of a picture. Let me bet on the guy with a 9.75 RAS with second round draft capital.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense to me. Again, Sinnott is probably more in line to be this year's Trey McBride, just given the fact that Zach Ertz is ahead of him on the depth chart. And that was something that was very similar with McBride as well. But yeah, I mean, he still has a month to earn the starting job. And Zach Ertz also still has a month to get hurt, which is probably what will eventually happen and get Sinnott as the starting tight end here. So yeah, I think that's probably the number 1 answer for who could be this year's Sam Laporta. I mean, maybe if we hear a lot of buzz that Jatavian Sanders is going to win the starting job in Carolina, but he also doesn't have the offensive environment that Sam Laporta had, but he could potentially be the number 2 target there if he was really productive and Leggett was a bust or something like that. So let's talk about this year's Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert was a guy that... What's up?
The other one that I thought about too that is very interesting, the aspect of maybe not the great offensive environment, but good innovative coach with the potential to develop into the number 2 weapon in his offense. Because outside of a certain rookie wide receiver, there's not much else going on in that offensive environment. I don't mind the shout of Daniel Bellinger. If you sneak him in the last round of your Underdog drafts, 18th round, this offense potentially turns it around closer to what they were in 2022. I think Daniel Bellinger is a talented player. And like Benson, it also has a very high RAS score. So sneaky little bet there if you can get him in the last round of your Underdog drafts.
Tight ends also kind of fit the bill. Whoever ends up starting for Green Bay would also potentially be in line to have a breakout season. Let's move to this year's Raheem Mostert, where Raheem Mostert last year, one of our favorite sleeper candidates. I had him in my September 4th sleeper video that I do every single year. And a lot of you guys commented that he can't stay healthy on that video. That was a lot of the comments on that video. He's an older running back coming off of major injuries and having a breakthrough season with an ADP in the 10th plus round. He was in a timeshare with Devon Achane and Jeff Wilson at the time, but he does get there because he's led the NFL in touchdowns on a top 5 offense. And he had the opportunity to dominate the red zone work because we didn't really believe that much that Achane would come right in right away and be the goal line back there. And Jeff Wilson was actually banged up throughout camp around this time of year as well. Didn't give us much in the receiving game, but that's not what we needed. We just needed a guy who was going to be efficient in a good offense, break away long runs, and score touchdowns. That's precisely what Raheem Mostert did for the Dolphins last year. To me, there is a very obvious answer for this one. I think the 2 that we have are clearly the 2 answers for this year's Raheem Mostert. Again, if you guys are having fun playing along with this kind of anecdotal game here, feel free to leave your answers down below in the comments. But my answer is J.K. Dobbins, because J.K. Dobbins is a guy who everybody, the second I say J.K. Dobbins' name in any piece of content, people comment down below, don't you know running backs never come off of Achilles tears very well? He's not going to stay healthy and things of that nature. But J.K. Dobbins is still actually quite young, and he, really has the opportunity to take over his backfield and be the goal line back there. It's an ambiguous situation. Gus Edwards is a little bit older. Greg Roman schemes up rushing offenses at a high level, just like Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins do, especially with the offensive line that the Chargers have. There's a very good chance whoever is the lead back there is going to be very efficient. And Raheem Mostert was getting a lot of good camp buzz last year, just like J.K. Dobbins is right now. I actually think Dobbins is a better receiving back than Raheem Mostert, too. I think he has the upside to catch a couple passes. We know Justin Herbert has no problem targeting his running backs, knowing what he's done with Austin Eckler over the years. And you can really Spider-Man meme Jeff Wilson into Gus Edwards right now. You think of the thumper back who was good the year prior, great on line, and he has dealing with injuries in camp. Like Gus Edwards apparently is coming off of surgery right now. And Gus Edwards basically had the exact same circumstances this year as Jeff Wilson last year.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it to a T. Dobbins is also like kind of the upside version of mine. Mine is more so like, I would be surprised if he didn't play that role versus with Dobbins. It's like, it's a little bit more of a projection, but if he does hit and if he is healthy, has the clear upside to be an RB1 in fantasy. So I like both of ours because it kind of almost shows the ceiling and the floor of the Raheem Mostert-esque breakout, because mine, it's disgusting. I'll get right into it because it's Ezekiel Elliott, running back of the Dallas Cowboys. Look, would I quite say that Zeke will finish as an RB1 in fantasy? No, like he's probably lacking the efficiency, point blank simple, to be able to do so. He's probably not the type of guy that, like Raheem Mostert last year, can knock over a 4.9 yards per carry. Like if Zeke is able to hit in this type of role, you're mostly looking at probably 3.8, 3.9 yards per carry, 200 carries for, what would that be, like 870 yards? But the way he gets there is that he checks literally every other box other than the pure efficiency that Raheem Mostert did. The Cowboys just came off a season where Tony Pollard had the second most red zone carries, the sixth most inside the 10 carries, and the seventh most inside the 5 carries in the entirety of the NFL, despite being the most inefficient volume goal line back in the entirety of the league. With Ezekiel Elliott, we saw what he was able to do in that exact role in 2022. It's hard for anyone to be like Mostert at this ADP. Again, with Dobbins, he doesn't quite have the floor that Raheem Mostert had with his situational insulation. And Ezekiel Elliott, quite frankly, doesn't have the ceiling that he did. But like I said, in 2022, when Ezekiel Elliott was able to get that goal line role for the Dallas Cowboys, despite being a back who was extremely inefficient in that season, he was a top 24 running back in terms of overall points per game. So with Ezekiel Elliott, maybe he receives, a couple extra touchdowns. Maybe he gets, 15 instead of the 12 that he scored that year. We have a guy that could potentially finish as a mid-range RB2 just on the back of touchdowns. Like, I get it. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't have to be a 250 carry, 80 target back because he has the opportunity to lead the NFL in touchdowns like Raheem Mostert did in 2023.
Yeah, he has a chance to do what Jamal Williams did 2 years ago, or what David Montgomery was doing basically before David Montgomery got injured. He was just this early down grinder who was going to score touchdowns anytime the Lions got into the red zone, and Ezekiel Elliott has the upside to potentially do that as well. I will say Nick Chubb is also probably an honorable mention for this as well, because if Nick Chubb can come back and play at a high level, then, and again, anytime you mention Nick Chubb's name, everyone flocks to the comments and says, he's coming off an ACL tear. Like, I'm aware of that. I'm just saying he has a chance to potentially do that. And also, I think worth mentioning too is Raheem Mostert's teammate, Jalen Wright. If Raheem Mostert does go down, the Raheem Mostert role might go to Jalen Wright. So that's something that also could potentially be that. Let's talk about Achane, obviously Raheem Mostert's teammate. A huge win rate guy last year, 17.83% win rate. The case for him was pretty simple. He was a young running back breakout candidate, and he also was a rookie, and he was a good prospect, and he carried a big workload in college, and he had all this elite upside as a pass catcher, and he was this elite athlete with 4.3 speed, and he was in this great scheme fit, right? When we were talking about Achane in the dynasty cycle, we were saying how great of a fit him going to the Dolphins was. So I look at, again, to me, this is the clear answer for this question is Trey Benson, because I think he fits the Achane profile the best for a couple of reasons. Number one, Achane was not the starter entering the NFL season last year, and Benson will not be the starter entering the NFL season because James Conner is routinely getting talked up as the lead back there, as the starting running back there. Elite athlete, Trey Benson with 4.3 speed. So he checks that box as well. pass catching upside. He was a good receiver in college, very efficient in college in that role, good offense. And his ADP right now is quite literally exactly where Devon Achane's ADP was last year. So for me, I look at Trey Benson again. He's also a great fit for the Cardinals offense too. They want to run this like physical downhill offense, but you have an explosive downhill running back who can contribute as a receiver. He is James Conner. If he can learn the intricacies that James Conner knows as a veteran running back, he will put it all together and be one of the best running backs in the league because he has the size, the speed, the receiving upside to be able to do that. So if there's a league winning running back this year, it's probably a guy who's like 220 pounds with 4.3 speed in an offense that fits him perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. Trey Benson is the ideal Devon Achane level archetype with the speed, with the overall game-breaking ability that he has to be able to add to this game. Not to mention, like you said, with James Conner, did have a relative peak season last year. We talked about it in a recent video we put up this week where his PFF grade, his overall rushing grade was way higher than his career average. Not to mention, this is a guy that has routinely missed time in the last few years. So if Trey Benson gets any opportunity, whether it's James Conner potentially struggling or whether it's James Conner potentially dealing with some injuries, again, older running back with a big workload under his belt, Trey Benson is the type of talent the RB2 selected in this past class to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I think honorable mention goes to Tajay Spears and Jaylen Warren, who both are like explosive young running backs who could take a step forward this year. But who do you got? You also kind of have the same type of archetype as those guys.
Yeah, and shout out London, Ontario, former London Mustang here. We got Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals, twin, Sidney Brown playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. But all jokes aside, Chase Brown showed the positive signs as a rookie behind Joe Mixon that we would have wanted to see in his rookie season. Now he's entering year 2 with Joe Mixon out of town. He has the potential opportunity to take that next step. It's being reported out of Cincinnati already that Brown has been taking the majority of their first team snaps. And this is an offense that projects to be a top 10 unit in the league, like the Miami Dolphins were going into the last season. With Chase Brown, he's good as a receiver as well, 10.4 yards per target as a receiver in his rookie season. And coming out of Illinois, one of the biggest pros we saw of him is that this was an athletic back with a legit 3-down skill set. So if Brown does see the starting level usage that it's being reported he's already seeing in camp right now, I think he has the opportunity to be one of the biggest league winners in fantasy, like Devon Achane was in the games he was healthy.
Yeah, and I think preseason usage is really going to sway his ADP one way or another. Because if we see him get elite preseason usage, like he's going to be a 4th or a 5th round pick. Like he's literally going to skyrocket all the way up there in terms of his home league ADP. I'm actually kind of hoping it's like a bit more of a split backfield in preseason games because then his price will stay low enough that you can tack him on as the end of your hero RB or whatever you want to do there with Chase Brown. And like I said, Tajay Spears and Jaylen Warren also kind of fit the bill for this year's Devon Achane as well. Let's talk about this year's Mike Evans. And Mike Evans obviously didn't go really late in drafts, but a lot later than Mike Evans typically goes in fantasy as a guy who'd been a 1,000-yard receiver for 10 straight years. His ADP was 78 last year, but he produced a 16.67% win rate because he was undervalued. And the reason he was undervalued is because even though he was a consistent producer for fantasy, he was being written off without Tom Brady. With Baker Mayfield now at quarterback, people did not want to draft Mike Evans, and people were worried about, Chris Godwin gets a lot of targets too. But Mike Evans, he got there. And the reason Mike Evans got there is because he's an alpha and he had a high touchdown rate last year. And he was the type of dude that you wanted on your fantasy team because he produced this spike weeks that we want to see. And him and Baker Mayfield obviously developed a very good connection throughout the year. So to me, again, there's a very clear answer to this one. When you look at 6th, 7th round wide receiver, and you could also kind of rope Michael Pittman Jr. in as like an undervalued veteran that went later on in drafts last year.
Oh, I was going to say, even the guy you selected, even his teammate, had he not been coming into the season with the knee injury that he just recently developed, you could have made the case for as well. But I'll let you take it away with Calvin Ridley, because, I mean, this is a guy that we were all over drafting last year in the 3rd round. So the fact that we're getting this type of big discount with potentially no D-Hop to enter the season, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I'm like emotionally scarred by Calvin Ridley this year. I don't feel like he had that bad of a season. Like you look at his season, he had a couple like really big performances, scored 8 touchdowns, was a top 30 wide receiver in points per game last year, but you are getting him at a significant discount to where you had to take him last year. He was a 2-3 turn pick last year, and we were absolutely okay taking him at that point in time. Mike Evans was going 74th overall last year. Calvin Ridley is going 73rd overall right now. So we're talking exactly the same range in ADP. He's a proven producer. We've seen him have, top 5 fantasy football season in an offense now where they paid him to be the number 1 wide receiver. They went out and signed him for a big contract extension, the Tennessee Titans. And people might just be coming back to the scene. If you're unaware, the Tennessee Titans do not have Derrick Henry anymore, and they don't have Mike Vrabel anymore. So they are going to be a lot more pass heavy, a lot more up tempo. They've invested in their offensive line in the draft with the top 10 pick. Brian Callahan is the new offensive coordinator coming from Cincinnati. They just let Jake Browning throw at a top 5 rate. Like, they are going to throw the ball with Will Levis. And Calvin Ridley has QB question marks, quote unquote, because we don't know if Will Levis is good or not. But could Will Levis be like Blake Bortles, Jameis Winston, or Mitch Trubisky, where he's just throwing the ball downfield inefficiently and still providing volume for Calvin
I think he's
Ridley?
got more upside than that.
He does. He definitely does. I think he has very, very Jameis-y kind of vibes to him. And if we're comparing to Mike Evans here, obviously Mike Evans played with Jameis for years. So Ridley also has a double-digit touchdown season in his bag. He scored 10 touchdowns as a rookie. He scored 8 last year. He scored 7 the last time he played a full season in 2021. So this is a dude that like legit could return on ADP, and I wouldn't be shocked. I feel like he is a popular whipping boy for sharps in the industry, for people to just be like, Calvin Ridley sucks. He's totally not a good option this year. But man, like, DeAndre Hopkins is injured now. 4 to 6 weeks he's expected to be out. Calvin Ridley with Will Levis in a pass-heavy offense. Like, I know he wasn't good last year, but he also had way more target competition. Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram were both very productive when they were healthy on the field last year. So for me, I look at Calvin Ridley as like, could he have 145, 150 targets this year? I think absolutely he could.
And just a hint right now, that is one of 3 Tennessee Titans offensive players we'll be talking about on this video. So I love the Calvin Ridley call. Again, this is a guy that's going now in what would you say, 73 overall? So that's round 6 of your drafts. His ADP may rise a little bit now with the news of DeAndre Hopkins potentially missing time. But I mean, he was still a relatively strong pick at that round 6 ADP. Now, if he's able to enter the season as the true clear alpha number 1 wide receiver, I wouldn't be shocked if he shows more improvement maybe in terms of his hands that he did last year in this preseason, and he's able to get himself into that round 4 or 5 area. Because to be honest, with D-Hop going through the injury issues he is, it's probably where Ridley should be going. Yeah,
I mean, if you compare him to like George Pickens or Zay Flowers, like you have a lot more pass volume in that situation, even, and especially with Pickens, like the quarterback play is not all that different with those two guys.
Yeah, 100%. So my player I'll go into, and again, this is not a perfect 1-for-1 comparison. I think Mike Evans is a more talented player than the guy I'm going to bring up. But in terms of the overall stature, 6'4", 220-pound, big-bodied ex-receiver, big-time touchdown equity in his offense, I got Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. Obviously, he already made reference to his teammate with Troy Franklin, but with Courtland Sutton, he's a guy who suffered from his situation in his last few years. He paid off in 2023 as this big-time touchdown scorer. Despite the inconsistencies with this offense with Russell Wilson running the show, his touchdown equity on what was an unclear situation is what helped him pay off as a top 35 wide receiver in fantasy this past season. Bo Nix, very young supporting cast as a whole, come in. And now with Courtland Sutton, he has the opportunity to build from the lack of volume that he was able to see last year. Commanded less than 100 targets. I do think with Bo Nix coming in, maybe offering more consistency to the offensive flow on a game-to-game basis, we can see him get it back to maybe not 140 target ceiling like we're talking about with Calvin Ridley, but possibly a 110, 120 level target baseline. Again, it's not a perfect one-to-one to Mike Evans, but a devalued, ex-big-bodied wide receiver that has the ceiling to potentially score 10-plus touchdowns being devalued because people are uncertain about the situation with a young quarterback coming in.
Yeah, I think Courtland Sutton also kind of stacks up as a pretty good option there. We'll try and speed these last couple up as we go through this, but we do have this year's Tank Dell, this year's Jayden Reed, this year's Rashee Rice, basically rookie wide receiver who's going outside of the top 11, 12 rounds in ADP. All of those guys produced 11% or better win rates. Subpar prospects, I would say, Jayden Reed, Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, none of these guys were like world beater prospects. And mainly, if you liked them, it was for film reasons. Like you and I were really into Jayden Reed. Some people were really into Tank Dell. There was truthers for Rashee Rice out there. All of these guys ended up being integral parts of their offense. A lot of them were shorter targets too. If you look at Jayden Reed, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice, a lot of these guys were like PPR guys that were getting short to intermediate targets, not really affecting the deep level of the field. And a lot of these guys got really positive camp buzz last year, and they had a path to being a top 2 target in their offense. With Rice, I mean, it was just Kelsey there that was proven. Jayden Reed, it was basically Christian Watson going into the season that was proven. And then Tank Dell just had Nico Collins ahead of him. So I think this one is also one that I really like. Malachi Corley of the New York Jets is one that kind of stands out to me because it's pretty easy for us to say that this wide receiver class was loaded, But I feel like when the wide receiver class is loaded, it's possible that players get lost in the shuffle. And Malachi Corley, to me, I think is one of these guys getting lost in the shuffle a little bit as a good upside swing because there's so many dudes to talk about. But he was a day 2 wide receiver. The Jets were reportedly very excited that they were able to secure him. Path to the number 2 wide receiver in his offense because other than Garrett Wilson, there's no real stud dudes there. Mike Williams is coming off a torn ACL. Short PPR target, just like kind of Jayden Reed, Rashee Rice, and Tank Dell were last year. And he's in potentially what we expect to be a great offense with Aaron Rodgers coming in. And he was also one of these prospects that had warts to his profile. But if you liked him, it was because of his film. And he has had some good camp buzz so far. It sounds like Rodgers really likes his presence in the offense. I would say specifically he profiles as like this year's Jayden Reed because he can provide a lot of stuff on design touches and carries and things of that nature. That was his game at Western Kentucky. So for me, I really like Malachi Corley as potentially this year's like Jayden Reed.
I like the show with Malachi Corley. I really do feel like if you're talking about a one-for-one stylistic comparison to a guy like Jayden Reed, really fits that bill as that yak threat around the early portion of the field, the intermediate portion of the field. My guy's going to be Xavier Legette, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers. He technically did go in round 1, but a lot of people had their concerns. Spotty college production profile, only 1 true year of full production, but while he technically does have that ball winner element to the year that you quite said at the beginning, that doesn't really fit the bill, people are really underrating his ability as a dangerous yak threat. This is a guy that at times in film, when you're watching him, legitimately looked like a colored version of A.J. Brown. Both of us had said that when we were making our film notes for Xavier Legette, a guy that we didn't expect to like the way we did, but he ended up grading as a top 8 wide receiver for us on our grading scale. Does go in round 1. The Carolina Panthers definitely agree with our frame of mind of him being a good prospect. And Dave Canales, when they drafted Xavier Legette, said, listen, like this is a guy that does have his warts. I understand that. But what he does well is what fits our offense to a T. We want to get him looks in the open field. We want to get him looks down the field. We understand that this isn't the most refined, second level type of prospect at this current point, but this is a guy that has the upside to be able to develop into a true 3-level threat. And with Xavier Legette, the fact that you have a coach that is so willing to embrace him, so willing to work with what he does well rather than focus on what he doesn't do well. We saw that last year. For example, Tank Dell coming into the league, 160-pound wide receiver. You don't want to get him against press. Guess what the coaching staff did? They did not get him against press last year. Jayden Reed wasn't the most refined overall receiver, but what he did well in the intermediate portion of the game, Matt LaFleur was able to scheme around. What we saw with Rashee Rice, for example, a guy that graded in I believe, the first percentile of Matt Harmon's reception perception, didn't matter because he played that slot intermediate role to potentially get that yak opportunity in that Andy Reid offense. They're all imperfect prospects, but you just need the coaching staff to be willing to embrace them and put them in spots to succeed. I think Xavier Legette has the opportunity to be the number 1 or number 2 target on this Carolina offense, on an offense that, quite frankly, I think is being slept on because I do believe in the talent of Bryce Young.
Yeah, and I think Corley also applies for that as well because the coaching staff, Robert Saleh, and a lot of the guys on that staff came from San Francisco, where Deebo Samuel was an imperfect prospect, and they figured out how to develop him and turn him into one of the best receivers in the league. I'm not saying Malachi Corley is going to be Deebo Samuel, but it's possible that they use him early career Deebo the way that they used him in San Francisco. So let's rattle through these last couple. We have this year's Jakobi Meyers / Adam Thielen. Both of these guys were veteran wide receivers outside of the top 130, 140 overall picks that had available volume in their offense, and both of them produced legitimate like wide receiver 2 production, sometimes even wide receiver 1 production. And they kind of came out of nowhere. And while they didn't really win you a championship necessarily, if you were in a deeper league where you started a lot of wide receivers, these guys were valuable pieces to have. And both of them in previous stops with the Vikings and with the Patriots had shown that they were productive NFL wide receivers. So my guy kind of cheating a little bit because he's going a lot higher than this on Underdog, but Curtis Samuel is actually going at pick 128 on average in multi-site ADP. If you remove Underdog from that, he's actually going well outside the top 10 rounds of ADP. Has volume ahead of him, right? Buffalo Bills don't have Diggs anymore, don't have Davis anymore. Good fit for the scheme. And similar to Jakobi Meyers, has actually played with the offensive coordinator before. So Curtis Samuel is a guy that I think has a chance to really outproduce the home league ADP that he has. And I think it should be a very good indication that he's a good pick where he's going in home leagues. The fact that Underdog fantasy drafters are drafting him in the top 90 overall picks, and he's going 30, 40 picks after that in home league ADPs, I think it definitely speaks to the fact that Curtis Samuel is just like this undervalued veteran wide receiver that people don't want to draft in home leagues. Again, would be a bit of a surprise based on his ADP in home leagues, but a little bit of a cheater's kind of pick here. I'd say Brandon Cooks and Josh Palmer also could fit the bill for this because both guys have a chance to produce in what we expect to be pretty good offenses, top 2 targets with targets available there. And then if I wanted to get super gross, can't be a top 2 target in this offense because they already have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But I do think Odell Beckham actually has a half decent chance to be better as a Miami Dolphin than he was as a Baltimore Raven. When I had Ryan Heath on, he basically outlined that he's like a top 5 receiver in terms of expected fantasy points lost to deep targets. And Tua Tagovailoa, if he does anything well, can throw the ball downfield pretty well and pretty accurately. And the offense itself, Miami they're going to elevate the play. People are not going to be on regression lists when they're on the Miami Dolphins. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, I think you outlined that to a T. OBJ, not to mention last year, coming off the knee injury that he did, obviously there's a big spectacle where he ultimately signs with the Ravens. He was relatively efficient on his targets. Obviously, the overall volume wasn't there, but I do think there's a really good potential opportunity there to work as the wide receiver 3 on Miami. So I like that, deep underlying shout, a guy that goes kind of in the last round area of underdog drafts, but a guy that I've actually been getting quite a bit of shares of too. So I'll go into my guy. And again, what do Jakobi, Meyers, and Adam Thielen have in common? They're kind of sexless picks. They're kind of picks last year that if you made them, you didn't really have much expectation for the ultimate ceiling, but they were just solid NFL players that fit their scheme, had familiarity with their coaching staffs. And for me, that's Tyler Boyd, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans. He has been a solid NFL wide receiver throughout his NFL career. Obviously, we remember his peak back in, the 2018, 2019 area where he was a wide receiver, 200-plus targets in fantasy. Unfortunately, ended up ceding volume to T. Higgins, to Jamar Chase in Cincinnati over these last few years. But I still think he's a really solid football player. Obviously, he does have familiar with head coach Brian Callahan's offense coming in. And like we mentioned with Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins is already dealing with a significant knee injury that's expected to limit him for the next 4 to 6 weeks. He's a 32-year-old wide receiver dealing already with lower body injuries. Who knows? What if that tailors into week 1, week 2? What if that carries on into week 6? Talking about an older 32-year-old wide receiver with injury problems going into the year, this almost feels like the same song and dance we make every single year. We obviously talk about, what D-Hop was able to do in his prime. What, for example, a few years ago, just on the Tennessee Titans, what Julio Jones is able to do in his prime. Unfortunately, once these lower body injuries start to add up, we do see them decline. And with Tyler Boyd, I think he would be the biggest recipient of a big-time uptick should DeAndre Hopkins miss time in the regular season, because quite frankly, we expect Calvin Ridley to be the one, but like you said, he's a little bit more of a volatile wide receiver 1. Tyler Boyd, he is the type of player that has shown when Jamar Chase or T. Higgins has missed time in the past, has been able to function as a top 35 level wide receiver in fantasy. So again, very sexless. Do I expect him to finish as a wide receiver 2 in fantasy like both Jakobi Meyers and Adam Thielen were able to do in 2023? Not necessarily, but should DeAndre Hopkins continue to miss time going into the regular season, I think he can be a fine wide receiver 3 option to plug into your lineups, at least in the early portion.
Yeah, and this is a guy that literally goes outside of the top 16, 17 rounds of underdog drafts. So while people are going to chase Treylon Burks and Chigakonkwo with the DeAndre Hopkins injury, like Tyler Boyd, it's really sexless, but he might actually be the guy that sees the biggest upgrade, like you said, outside of Calvin Ridley. So let's head into the quarterback position. We had a couple late round quarterbacks that hit big last year: Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud. All of those guys were outside of the top 150, 160 overall picks, and all of them produced 10+% win rates in best ball. Young quarterbacks, all of those guys, Purdy, Love, and Stroud, all of them were attached kind of to innovative offenses that heavily kind of outperformed our expectations of them and some of the concerns that we had for these guys as players. With all 3 of these guys, they are pocket style passers, and they got there in fantasy basically being more productive than we thought they were going to be and being a little bit further along as players as we thought they were going to be, specifically with rookie CJ Stroud. All of them finished as QB1s in points per game and provided a really significant edge, especially if you drafted them in best ball in 3 quarterback builds and tacked them on as your 3rd guy. They would have been really awesome pieces for that. I mean, Purdy, to me, his price never made any sense all of last offseason. So he was a little bit easier to spot because he just played for such a good team. But Jordan Love and CJ Stroud legitimately had concerns there where we're we didn't know how good Jordan Love was. We didn't know how good CJ Stroud was going to be in that situation. For me, given the talent concern, I like Deshaun Watson to fit this bill because we have a talent concern with Deshaun Watson. He's not even a pocket passer, which actually presents more upside because we know he can run. but I do believe that he has a chance to be one of the highest win rate quarterbacks in fantasy this year because he's going in the 150s, in the 160s of drafts. And the offensive environment around him actually got better from where it was last year. We saw David Njoku have a great second half of the season. Amari Cooper was very solid last year. They bring in Jerry Jeudy. Again, the run game's a little on the fritz right now, so maybe they pass the ball more. And we've actually heard a lot of reports now that the Browns want to pass the ball more, intend to run more up-tempo, higher pace of play on offense. So if that happens, Deshaun Watson has a chance to be a lot better than people are thinking. Again, nobody likes Deshaun Watson as a human being, but he has a chance to actually really outperform his ADP in fantasy. He is one of my highest rostered quarterbacks on Underdog simply because I think even if he's as bad as he was last year, I mean, you look at his game logs and he had like a number of top 5, top 10 quarterback scoring weeks without Jerry Jeudy there. And Jerry Judy's not the greatest receiver in the world, but he's another weapon for him to throw to. And if they, like I said, throw the ball more than they're basically anticipating with some of their comments, it's possible that Deshaun Watson plays a lot better too. So he's one of those guys that I think has a chance to be a really good high win rate quarterback late in drafts.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have a moral high ground, maybe you don't take Deshaun Watson, but he's a guy that have 18.1% ownership over on Underdog. And like you kind of said, even if he's 70% of the Deshaun Watson from the past, he still has the opportunity to potentially finish not only above where he's going, because he's going as the quarterback 20, but potentially as a mid-range quarterback 2, potentially even a quarterback 1. So I do like that call. My call, I mean, like Underdog, everything kind of correlates. I mean, you talk about, these big stacks that everybody's drafting over on Underdog Fantasy. I kind of made that theme in this video because we talked about Calvin Ridley earlier. We just talked about Tyler Boyd. We made reference to Will Levis, but I'm actually going to pick him as this year's Jordan Love because I think that's probably the best comparison for him. Toolsy prospect, really an unknown what he could do on a full season sample size, but I love the signs that I saw from him in his first year. He's very intriguing. The vast majority of people had their problems with him in terms of his prospect profile. People pointed to him, he's a boom bust prospect. We don't know what the overall floor is going to be. Is he going to wash out of the league? Like, there were some wild claims being made about Will Levis going into last year, even before he took an NFL snap. And he showed some real signs of growth last year, despite what can be deemed an archaic situation he got thrusted into. I mean, we're talking about a poor offensive line last year, poor overall offensive scheming under the past regime with Todd Downing. Now you're talking about going into this year, this offseason, the Tennessee Titans completely rebuilt their identity on offense. Derrick Henry's out of the fold. Mike Vrabel's out of the fold. Obviously, like I said, the aforementioned Todd Downing is out of the fold. They rebuilt this offense to tailor around Will Levis. They hire an offensive-minded head coach there with Brian Callahan coming from the very successful Cincinnati Bengals. Their offensive line should be much better with Brian's dad, Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches of all time, coming in to coach the unit. You add 2 high-level wide receivers there with Calvin Ridley, with Tyler Boyd added to the fold, and you do draft J.C. Latham, a star offensive line prospect with the 7th overall pick. All the signs we're hearing this offseason is that they want to support Will Levis. They want to give him the best chance to succeed. And it's very similar to, for example, I mean, I'm not going to compare him to the San Francisco situation, but Brock Purdy put in a very good position to succeed with the weapons, with the overall offensive play calling there. Jordan Love, same thing. Matt LaFleur, very, very good weapon score. Same thing last year, of course, obviously with CJ Stroud. Bobby Slowick eventually ends up being one of the best offense coordinators in the NFL. Those young, talented wide receivers end up developing. So with Will Levis, people have their thoughts on him potentially being a very volatile boom bust profile, but they're making the assumptions of him before he took the NFL snap and based off of last year without acknowledging that the situation as a whole has gotten much better for him. So with Will Levis, if there's a quarterback going outside of the top 20 in ADP right now that I think has the upside to be a quarterback 1, it would be Will Levis because he's got the big arm, he's got underrated mobility, and we were able to see that ceiling on display in spurts last year.
Yeah, and the volume, more importantly, is the thing that could actually carry him to that level. Because if he's throwing the ball 625 times, like I said, all he has to do is be like a 2018, 2019 Jameis Winston, and he actually has the upside to really obliterate his ADP where he's going right now. So he's a guy that I've been drafting a lot of in 3 quarterback builds and things of that nature to try and get some upside to my quarterback core. So again, this was a fun exercise. Maybe it wasn't the most informative because a lot of the answers to these questions is there going to be a Kyren Williams? Probably not. Is there going to be a Puka Nacua? Probably not. Is there going to be a Sam Laporta? Probably not. But it's fun to think of who could be those guys or who makes for good sleepers, good late round league winning prospects or league winning targets that we can go after. So Appreciate you guys for sticking around to the end. If you did, leave a like down below. Feel free to answer who you think this year's Kyren, Sam Laporta is in the comment section and give your rationale why. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And of course, if you want our draft guide and all of our rankings, you can get that by clicking the link down below in the description to sign up on underdogfantasy.com. Take some of this advice right into action. Use the promo code FSE for 100% back up to $250, as well as a special pick 'em when you sign up. You'll get our draft guide for free when you sign up with a minimum of $10. And if you are in an eligible state where you can't play Underdog or you already have an Underdog account, you can also get our draft guide on flockfantasy.com and use code FSE over there as well. Both things linked down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.